I have started the meeting.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, advisory team for the high school project. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're happy to come back with you all. I think some follow-up from our meeting in August was to spend a little bit more time on the site, and so that's what we want to do tonight. For those of you who joined the meeting on Monday, it's basically the same presentation, but we'll pause for discussion among the advisory team members throughout. For those of you who don't know me or maybe are joining, my name is Erica Gulick. I'm the Director of Capital Programs Planning and Design with Alexandria City Public Schools. And before we get started, I did want to just offer an opportunity for Mr. Alexander Duncan to introduce himself. He's the new campus administrator of Minnie Howard. So Mr. Duncan, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Duncan. I am the new campus administrator, like you just said, at Minnie Howard. I'm excited to be working with you all, and I look forward to all the work that we'll do together.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Duncan just got roped into this, I think, yesterday. So he and I have some catching up to do, and we will certainly do that. But we can go ahead and get started with our presentation. Just a reminder for everybody, this is an advisory team meeting, so it will be recorded, it will be posted online, and the public is able to view, but they aren't able to interact or submit questions or anything like that, but they are welcome to watch the meeting as we go through. So you could go to the next slide, Dia. We'll just jump right in. So tonight, as I mentioned before, and just following up on some of the requests of our last meeting together, we wanted to talk with you all about more of the site amenities. In particular, we're going to talk about some of the sustainability elements of the design, as well as the site design. A landscaping design. We know we have, we're situated in a residential neighborhood and on kind of a major street. And so the landscaping design will be a critical component for us. And then we'll also talk about site access and parking throughout the site. So our civil engineer is here to do a majority of the presentation. We'll then go over a budget and schedule update. We'll answer any questions. I just want to let you know we are going to, just tonight, because it's a little bit of a less formal discussion, we're going to stop after the landscaping design. Our Kyle, our civil engineer, is going to take a pause, and we'll talk about everything that we've talked about up until that point, and then we'll move on to site access and parking, just to give a little bit of a separation between those two discussions. So if you can wait for that pause to ask your questions, that would be great. And with that, I will not, can we go to the next slide? I will turn it over to Ken Terzian with Perkins Eastman to talk about sustainability.
Good evening, everybody. I am architect with Perkins Eastman, Ken Terzian, doing project management. I just have a couple of slides, general orientation to go over, and then I'll hand it over to Kyle Bollinger with Kimley Horn, who's the lead on our civil engineering. This slide, I think people are pretty familiar with our site. The Braddock Road on the south, the sun comes over on the right-hand side, orienting to the bottom of the page to the south, and then over to the west. So we've arranged photovoltaic panels, solar panels, in a number of areas on the site in order to generate electricity and to provide some shading over some key pieces, parking on the east side and to the south of the fields over the bleacher area. As you probably know, the Alexandria Green Building Policy has a couple of key components. One is for us to achieve net zero, which means that we generate all of the electricity on an annual basis that's consumed by the facility. So there are two parts to that. One is to lower the consumption, and the other is to find ways to generate that power on site. So the lowering of the consumption happens in a number of ways with the use of LED lighting, the use of very efficient mechanical systems, in this case, geothermal heat pumps with the geothermal wells, primarily on the west side underneath the fields. Other aspects of sustainability, and particularly key in this area, have to do with stormwater management. Some of that we're achieving with bioretention, which are areas that the water can gather, that are planted with plant material that doesn't mind getting its feet wet. But we are also improving the site water, stormwater runoff from the existing condition with a 10% reduction in the peak flow from what it is today. So we're actually making things better. The photovoltaic panels that are shown on the site in green are supplemented with panels on the roof of the building as well as on the facades. If we go to the next slide, you can see two renderings, both from the Braddock Road side, the one on the top of the primary entrance, looking slightly to the west of the entry, and one on the bottom, looking from the southeast towards the Scholars Green with the entry on the left-hand side. And you can see, again, on the facades, we've located solar panels that generate power and also provide shading of the windows, because reducing that solar gain is another way to improve on the efficiencies. We also are pursuing the LEED Gold certification, which has issues related to the site as well as issues related to the operations on the building. Having very rigorous standards on maintaining indoor air quality, the selection of materials with low VOC, energy consumption, as well as water conservation for the fixtures. We've got low flow fixtures throughout, and are taking advantage of all of those latest technologies within the building. I should move on to Kyle Bollinger now, if you go over a few things on the site, particular detail.
Sure. And good evening, everyone. I'm Kyle Bollinger with Kimley Horn, the site civil engineer for this. And just a little bit of information. What we're looking at here is related to a site section taken along Braddock Road. So this would be if you're standing more or less across the street on the Episcopal side of Braddock Road looking at the project. You can see there's a lot of elevation change, as well as a lot of the street trees that we have shown that you'll see later in a graphic regarding some of the additional street tree plantings that we have. Some key takeaways here regarding the tennis court lights. They're currently proposed to be 40 feet in height, and the rectangular athletic field would be a 60-foot height. And we're proposing a ball net that goes around a majority of the athletic field to keep the balls in and not going into the adjacent neighboring properties. And then due to some of the grades that we have out here on site, there's a lot of tiered retaining walls kind of between the tennis courts down to the athletic field, then down again to kind of the plaza that enters the school on the western side. So there's a lot of retaining walls that can help provide some placemaking architectural elements in addition to making the site work with all the grade change. And as mentioned before, there is a pretty heavy landscape buffer that we are proposing around the outer edge of our property bordering the adjacent residential neighborhoods. And then the next slide flips over to the kind of more aerial view of it, showing a colored version of the site plan depicting where the building is, the soccer fields. But a majority of what we can focus on here is the existing and proposed landscaping that we have. Along the western side and the northern side of our project, there are some kind of shaded lighter green colored circles. Those represent some of the existing trees that we are proposing to keep with our plan. And then the darker circles, kind of the more filled in circles, are the proposed landscape trees that we are going to be adding as part of this project. So we're planting a very good buffer along the western residential neighborhood, as well as directly to the north of us. And as you can see on the south side along Braddock Road, we have a lot of proposed street trees, some kind of double layered street trees with a little bit of a gap towards kind of the main building on the southeast corner to allow a little bit of the building architecture to shine through as you're walking or driving by the site. As Ken mentioned, you can see a lot of the PV panels, which are kind of shown in like a light blue colored, are over majority of the parking spaces. So they will help to both generate energy from solar panels, as well as help to shade some cars with a heat island effect on that. The next slide here shows a couple images of the sample trees that we're proposing around the site. Just various in terms of street trees, and some of the more evergreen trees kind of shown in the bottom right-hand corner are some of the proposed buffer trees that we're planting that would offer year-round screening. And the next slide shows some of the proposed shrubs that we would have just kind of as architectural elements and just kind of overall plantings around the site, just to help add a little green and a little color to some of these to our project. And the next slide shows the wooden fence that we're proposing to replace along the residential neighbors, which is primarily along the western side and the northern side of our property line. There is an existing fence, and our project is proposing to take down that fence and replace with this board-on-board fence. The image on the left kind of shows just a graphic of what the fence will look like. And then on the right side is a kind of more construction detail showing just typically how it would be handled with the footers. And then the next slide here shows pretty much what we're proposing to do with the athletic lights on the Mini Howard campus. And there are three major elements that we have here that will be lit with these kind of overhead Musco lights. They're the tennis court, the rectangular field, and then we have an option for the basketball futsal court as well. But some of the key takeaways of this slide here, that line that's highlighted with the big red arrow, it's kind of a blue colored line. That is what I'll call the zero light line from the athletic field lights. So by that, what I mean, if you look at the top right image of the screen, it's a representation of what these lights can do and how bright they are on the playing surface and how quickly it gets dark outside of the playing surface. So that blue line on the graphic on the left pretty much shows where it will be dark. So it gets very dark just outside the playing surface. And the blue line doesn't take into account any of the existing vegetation or proposed vegetation. So it will offer just additional screening to that as well. And then the image on the bottom right shows just kind of what we anticipate for parking lot lights, how everything is directed downward in some of the parking areas. And then with that, here in our presentation on Monday night, we had a community polling question asking how we thought the proposed landscaping and fencing for the Mini Howard campus met the community need. And of the folks that responded, I would say, let's see, what was it? 50% said well, 40% were very well, and 10% were neutral. So of the folks that were polled, it was overall a very positive response to the current proposed design for that. And then as Erica mentioned, we'll kind of take a pause here. If there are any questions or comments or discussion topics that we'd like to further investigate on what we've presented so far.
And so for the advisory group members, if you could raise your hand, and then we'll go through and call on you. If there was anything related to sustainability, the lighting, landscaping, fencing, any of that you want to discuss.
Erica?
Yes. Oh, Tom, go ahead.
Thank you.
I see you raising your physical hand. That counts.
Right. I use an iPad, so I have no keyboard or anything.
No
like
problem.
that.
No problem.
I have several questions. One is this runoff, stormwater runoff, could be mitigated by a permeable surface for parking. Since there will be a lot of parking built, is that parking going to be permeable?
So currently we do have some permeable parking on this site. It is at the very southeast corner to help treat some of that eastern parking lot, the main surface parking lot.
And would there be a reason you wouldn't use permeable for all of your parking?
It just comes down to the stormwater treatment shown on the site. So we've got a combination of the permeable paving, parking. A lot of the parking areas are currently proposed to drain to the bioretentions, which are kind of on the right side, there's two triangular portions of it. So all the surface runoff, instead of going into the parking, would go into those green areas and then filter through the plantings.
Okay, on the, one of the additional factors besides the light on the athletic fields is noise. And the trees and the fence will certainly screen some of the noise, but a berm, particularly on the west end, there's currently a berm. The elevation goes up considerably. I'm hoping that that existing berm isn't eliminated and some sort of a wall. I mean, these retention walls, it's interesting. Well, let me just ask you, what is the height of the retention wall between the tennis court and the athletic field, and then between the athletic field and the school? What are the height of those two retention walls?
Sure. So to answer your first question regarding the berm on the western side,
Yeah, or the north side.
yeah, so
A berm for noise mitigation, as in addition to the light pollution, is a more effective remedy than the trees, and the fence are certainly desirable and applicable to the light, but not so effective against the noise. A berm would be the most effective noise mitigation, since some of these residences are hard up against the athletic field.
yeah, so along the western side, you can see that the trail kind of goes kind of planned north and then kind of makes a circle over there around the west. That follows the existing curb line of what is there today. So we're not proposing to do any modifications to that slope over there on the western side. So that will remain.
Okay.
A lot of those existing trees will remain, and we'll be supplementing additional trees that you can see over there.
Okay.
Along the northern side, the elevation change is generally about what it is today. It's fairly close to the existing grade back there, and just due to the planting areas and what is the difference between the proposed field and the walkway behind it, it doesn't leave much room of a berm, so to speak, for it. Berms generally take up a lot of surface area in order for you to go up and then back down. But with that, to answer your next question on regards to the retaining walls, so starting at the tennis courts, it is about a 13-foot drop. So the tennis courts are high, going left to right. The tennis courts are high, then it's about a 13-foot drop down to the soccer field right there in the middle. And then it's about another 6-foot drop from the soccer field down to that plaza area on the western side of the school.
There's going to be a 13-foot high wall separating the tennis court from the football field.
Yes.
Oh, wow. And so if you're on the tennis court, what's the height of that wall? Is it ground level? Is there a 13-foot drop with some sort of wrought iron fence to prevent you from following a ball over the edge of the 13 feet?
There will be a chain link fence on top of it, kind of as traditional tennis courts have, to prevent
Gotcha.
falling from it. Yes.
A 13-foot. And then the one between the football field and the school?
It's about 6.
6 feet. So there's a total of a 20-foot elevation change from the west to the school, from the west boundary to the school. And since these athletic fields need to be level, that elevation change is accomplished through 13-foot walls and good heavens. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
you're correct.
One other thing, if I could, and then I'll stop. And that is that it's been very interesting about solar panels. Solar panels are very cachet, but they're primarily manufactured in China using coal power, which then the coal exhaust floats over the Pacific Ocean and lands on top of us. So it's turning out that all the savings that an individual place might achieve by the use of solar panel is being lost to the fact that the Chinese use some pretty dirty methods to manufacture. Is there any proposal to actually use American produced solar panels in this construction, or are we just going to buy the dirty coal produced Chinese solar panels?
You'd like me to take that one, Erica?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
I could jump in.
You made it sound like a no-brainer. where should we be buying our panels? The timeline for when the panels are purchased is a couple of years out.
Hmm.
And we're all already predicting that there's going to be some change in the market and some change in the efficiency of panels. And while we are not currently planning to purchase the panels as part of this project, we're looking at a PPA, purchase power agreement, which is essentially leasing the panels from a provider.
Okay. Okay.
And so
Where an electric producer supplies
Yeah,
the panels.
so we
Oh, got
essentially
it.
are buying the service
Gotcha.
and not having the capital outlay in order to get the panels. So we don't yet know who will be providing that and the source of their panels.
But you could write this sort of provision into the contract proposal.
Yes, and I'm not an expert on it. Our engineer, who is an expert, is not on this call, but I do know that the market is changing, and at least with this administration, we're getting a renewed interest in some of the renewable energies and incentives for that, and American producers are stepping up to the plate. So I agree with you. The last thing I want to do is buy solar panels from China that are manufactured using coal energy, but we don't have that yet resolved.
Right.
And to the extent we can control it, we will.
Thank you.
Erica, it looks like we also have a question in the chat. Ms. Kadir asked if we need to add more landscaping to the west and east and other side to minimize noise and light from the field.
So, sorry, the west and the
Probably north.
probably north side. Okay, north side to minimize noise. So, Kyle, can you just explain here, because it's kind of hard to tell with those like green buffer circles what those are. Just like how dense or what we're anticipating for this landscape line, maybe a little bit more in detail.
Yes, I can. Now I'll caveat this to saying I'm not a landscape architect, so I'll play my best with knowing some of these trees. But the overall intent here, at least along that northern side, there's a couple, like if you look at the the blue basketball court kind of at the center. Yep. And then right north of that, there are some existing green trees that are to remain. So we're not proposing to take those out as part of our project, and what is there will remain for it. And kind of in the center of the athletic field, we're proposing a mix of those evergreen trees, and they are generally, I don't know the height off the top of my head, but they're all fairly close together so that they will all grow together in the 10-year canopy. So once they get to their mature width, they'll all kind of be almost like one solid, I don't want to call it a hedgerow because it's pretty tall, but it will be a pretty consistent buffer along that northern facade right there of those trees, just to provide that screening to the property to the north. And then around to the west, we've got some additional plants, trees that we've got there saving in the southwest corner on that existing hill that we were talking about with Tom earlier, as well as some new proposed plantings right over there, kind of the northwest corner, as well as some kind of partially between that natural grass area at the northwest corner of the new soccer field.
Thanks, Kyle. Any other advisory group members, questions or comments in general about what we talked about so far before we move on to traffic things? Yeah, Vivian, go ahead.
I have a question regarding where we have that south bus loop parking lot. Can you actually, was there an elevation that was provided off of the south side along that elevation? That's not, yeah, probably maybe this grading plan that might be helpful. All right, so okay, so the trees, the grove of trees I see along that length of soccer field, that's probably blocking the parking spaces there. My question was this: the solar panels that are being provided along the west side of that parking area, is there a reason they're not provided like for that full parking lot eastward?
Oh,
The-
the shading over the bus loop, is that what you're asking?
Right, yeah, yeah. Is there a reason we can't extend that shading to the other parking spots?
Not directly, but what we've done is to optimize the square footage of solar panels required for what we anticipate the energy needs to be. So, you know, if we were to extend it there, we would probably retreat it from somewhere else because, you know, the balance of calculating our needs is what's important. We don't want to overbuy areas. In fact, some of the city review comments currently are asking us to reduce some of the coverage in that
Oh.
area around the bleachers.
Okay,
So we're, you know, it's a delicate balance, and
yeah,
I frankly, I don't have the answer on exactly how we ended up with the areas where we do,
okay,
but it was a combination of studies for where we thought the benefit would be, not just for capturing the sun, but also providing some shading.
got it.
And also, Medea, can you go back to the solar panel image? Yeah. So it also, you know, buses are taller than cars, and I don't know how tall we're going with the structure that supports the solar panels, but right now it's just proposed over the car parking spaces and not the bus parking spaces, which are on that east side, which I'm guessing.
Understood. Yeah,
Are-
understood and agreed. I see the expanse of the solar panels and I just think about, like, you know, FedEx Field and how amazing it is that first of all, they provide that shade and that canopy, but then do double duty and producing electricity being used. And that's where I thought, oh, it would be great to get some more shade, especially thinking about how hot our summer was and how many times I wish that there was more shade.
Yes.
There are also some areas where we've maintained clearance for emergency vehicles, which also have a higher clearance. Coming up
Understood,
on the
yeah.
east side adjacent to the building, and on the west side of the building, straight in where the basketball courts are in the distance. So
Got it.
Yep.
Understood. Thank
Mm.
you.
Medea, one additional thing, if you could flip to the colored site plan, I want to say it's 2 or 3. If you look along the south part of that bus loop, we've got a lot of it proposed trees on the south side of it, and the tree heights that those trees will eventually grow to will just cast shade over those solar panels. So they're not really useful. They won't get their full use on that southern part of that bus loop.
Understood. Thank you.
Katie, you want to go?
Yeah, one more thing, and I just because I can't overlay this design to the elevation design, but I just want to make sure the soccer field will be level, right? Like just the other plan kind of showed that it was going down, and it was the arrows were showing the soccer field.
Mhm.
Just right. I'm assuming that in the soccer field also includes other, like that basketball court. So there will be soccer field there won't be a dip.
Correct. The soccer field is completely flat. This is like, if you're walking along the sidewalk, this is what you'd expect to see walking along the sidewalk.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
internal to the site, we've got those retaining walls that help take the slope of the road, flatten it out, so that we've got flat places for tennis, for soccer, for basketball, for just overall pedestrians walking around. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Good questions. Anybody else? Any other advisory team members? Okay, if not, we'll move on, but we'll of course have time for questions at the end too, if you have more. So Kyle, you can keep going.
Yes. So next here is kind of a overall summary of the parking around the Mini Howard campus. And you'll see that there's 2 colors here, purple and light blue. And the purple being the what I'll call permanent parking spaces that are always going to be available for the site. whether it's faculty, students, visitors for athletic events, those will be always available and always open as traditional car parking spaces. The light blue, which is in the bus loop, are what we call shared parking spaces. And it's a drive aisle for the bus. So when, the students are being dropped off and picked up, that light blue area will be used for the buses to drop off students and pick up students. But during the day, potentially for visitors, or after school for athletic events, that same blue area is also provided for car parking, like standard car parking. So it's a little bit of you can almost see it as like an overflow parking space for those times when the buses aren't in use. So this is just kind of an overall breakdown of it. And just the site summary on the top left is, per the Alexandria zoning code, we need between 174 and 179 parking spaces. And the breakdown of the purple parking spaces are that we have 168 permanent parking spaces, and then there's additional 56 in the bus loop, bringing the total parking spaces available on the site to 224 when the buses are not there. And then this next slide kind of shows the overall circulation of how this shared parking, particularly in this bus loop area, would work. The blue lines would be the traditional car pathway through, in which they would drive down the center. It's a kind of a one-way street, so to speak, and you're entering from the right side, which is the curb cut to the existing eastern parking lot between the school and the field as it is today. And then you'd exit on the west side, which is the current bus loop entry of the school as it is today. So we're utilizing the same curb cuts that are there along Braddock Road for our proposed bus loop and kind of western half access here. And then the red line that you see there with the arrows is kind of the path of the buses, and that they would kind of drive over the parking spaces to allow them the turning movements to all kind of queue up and stack up for pickup and drop off times.
Kyle, if I could just clarify something, this isn't happening at the same time. So either buses are pulling in or cars are pulling in, but they're not pulling in together.
Yes. Thank you, Erica. And then on the eastern parking lot, which was kind of the main surface parking lot, this is one of the proposed options that we're still working through with the city staff in terms of final access to this. What we have shown here is a turn lane both into and out of the, a turn lane into a left turn into the parking lot, as well as a new curb cut in which we would remove the median as it is right now on Braddock Road to allow full access movements. And it would be a proposed traffic signal that would be flashing yellow for the folks that are on Braddock Road and then flashing red during a majority of the day. And then when it is peak flow time for the schools to get vehicles in and out during, parent drop off, pickup, stuff along those lines, it becomes a working traffic signal. Or I guess an operational traffic signal. And it's similar. I'm not sure if folks on this call are familiar with FC Hammond, but there is a signal at FC Hammond that functions the same way, in which it's a flashing yellow light on the main, what we're looking at here, east-west for Braddock Road, and then it's flashing red for any vehicles that are leaving the parking lot right now. But that being said, it is still being determined with city staff, the final configuration for this eastern parking lot access point. But we just wanted to show you all one of the options we're working on. And then with that, I believe I'll turn it back over to Erica.
Thank you, Kyle. So just really briefly, we wanted to give an update on the project budget. The last time we shared a budget with you, I believe it was the schematic design estimate. We now are at the stage where we have the 100% design development phase estimate, and it has come down even closer to our budget. So that's great. Our high school program portion of the budget, the latest estimate was 150.7 million. Our budget is 150, so a little bit of work to do, but certainly achievable. Aquatic facility is coming in at around 18.1 million. Our budget is 18.5. And then we have the Alexandria Health Department and the DCHS spaces, which include the DCHS offices as well as early childhood. And you can see those budget numbers there. I just want to note that this estimate we just received last week. It's the estimate from Gil Bain, our construction manager, and we are still reconciling. And then we'll be going through some value management activities to see what more we can save on the project. But overall, it's looking like we are on budget, which is great at this stage. And we go to the next slide. Just to review the timeline again. And reiterating that while we are have been planning, designing, and will eventually be constructing a new building, we're also planning, designing, and implementing a connected high school network high school program, and they are working on that. We'll provide some updates in the future. Just want to point out on the construction timeline that we are showing a potential start as early as March of 2022, as early as 6 months from now, depending on getting through our permitting processes and everything else. We may start some early site work next spring, which we know would take the fields potentially offline, as well as some of the other site amenities. So we are working with RPCA and our school as well to make sure that they're aware and prepared for that. And we'll certainly keep this group updated. As you all know, after we could go to the next slide, sorry, jumping ahead. On the, just so you know, for our next steps in November, December, we'll likely have another advisory group meeting, just preparing for the public hearing in January. We are on target to go to Planning Commission and City Council in January for their approval of our DSUP and all associated amendments. And then early spring, we would have a final meeting to kind of prepare for construction. And that would be the conclusion of this group. We'd love to keep you all, though, as our kind of points of contact to help us get information out to the community throughout the project. But that's kind of our next steps. And with that, I think that's it. So we can go back to if you have any questions about the parking and site access piece. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
I think, Ken, you were describing a new light at the east end where the purple parking is, with a new cut in the divided Braddock. Is that correct? Ken?
Yes, that's correct.
There is an existing light. Wouldn't these two lights be within about 50 to 60 feet of one another?
They are farther apart than 50 to 60 feet. I can try to measure it real quick while I'm talking here. Do double duty. The existing light is at Marley Way. Correct. And between Marley Way and our proposed signal. But that being said, the proposed signal is not in operation at all times during the day. It is just, hold on, let me see if I can do my best guess here. It is about, measuring it meters, 350 feet away from the proposed or the existing signal over there at Marley Way.
It's pretty close, Ken said. I mean, visually to a motorist, that's going to be right on top of one another. I was wondering also, there is currently a cutout in Braddock, an additional right turn lane at the west end, so that cars and buses can turn into the west end parking. Your schematic here doesn't show a cut. It shows the parking and bus loading, unloading as coming out to the existing travel lane on Braddock. Are you taking over the right turn, current right turn lane at the west end of this property? And is that something that you've already arranged with the city?
Yes, we are removing that that cutout area on the western edge, specifically because that is now going to be a exit only location as part of the configuration here of the bus loop and parking that we've got on that western side.
Got it. And finally, Eric, I wonder if I could just pull Jack Broward into this for a moment. The use of these fields nights and weekends will be extensive, and those people come from all over, not even just Alexandria, but literally from all over. And the use of North Early Street as a overflow parking area for things that go on at Minnie Howard has been a constant ongoing complaint by the residents of North Early Street for literally years. I'm wondering if Jack, the city would make a special effort to work with the residents. They already have a commercial dash bus that goes up and down. They're often used as cut through by heavy trucks. And there is that affordable housing unit being built at Menoken, and all of this is just really putting those residents of North Early at a disadvantage in terms of traffic. To have additional night and weekend recreational parking by people from all over Northern Virginia is just a really a burden to place on those people. And having some extra effort by the city to mitigate that would be something I think that every resident would expect the city to undertake.
Well, yeah, no, I think we could work with the schools and work with our partners in TNES to see what options there may be. I mean, we're not anticipating significantly more activity here than currently happens today. And the preponderance of use right now is, more than half the use is directly associated with ACPS. So it is an Alexandria City School program. And with the exception of a very few private rentals. No, I heard you.
I just wanted you to be aware. I think the significant difference is that you're moving the football field about a quarter mile closer to North.
No, I get that. No, I completely understand what you're saying, Mr. Fulton, but I just wanted to let you know that we're not expecting a significant increase in the amount of use here. There will have to be an education with regard to the users to utilize the existing field, the existing complex parking, but we could work with TNES to determine, what measures could potentially put in place to dissuade any use of this facility from utilizing and or expanding onto the public streets. I mean, it won't just be potential use for the fields. This will be also available for swimming events, interior gym events, phys ed programs, and or just community use of the gym as occurs today. Yes, and we're completely aware that some of these activities are on the other side of the property. And, we can hit this in, like I said, two different ways. One would be what measures could be done that don't provide an unintended consequence to the residents there, but also it's going to be an education to the users as to where the parking should occur.
Well, thank you. That's a good answer. And the burden shouldn't fall entirely on the residents of North Early Street. The city has an obligation in this regard, Jack, and it falls squarely within recreation and TNS. So it's a problem that you have to face, and it's a problem that TNS will have to face, and it is an obligation by the city when they impose that sort of burden on the residents.
Yeah, we don't set out with the intent to harm the quality of life of the residents. And so, we'll do our best to ensure that people park where they should.
Thank you.
If there's one other piece of information I can chime in with here. So we're looking at the screen here that there's a total of 224 parking spaces proposed here. The existing school has 145. So this redevelopment adds just about 80 parking spaces to the school campus.
Yeah, no, it's the work here is good, and I support that. I, however, have lived in this neighborhood for over 35 years, and I have watched how Minnie Howard has imposed itself on its neighbors, and that's just a fact of life. And so when there is change and the potential for additional burden on the residents comes into being, it's good for the city to get ahead of it by understanding the potential problems that might occur and to work ahead of time and not simply react when the neighbors are trying to burn down City Hall. But I got it. You guys are working on it, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Erica.
Okay, great. Thanks for the comments, Tom. It's helpful. Anybody else? Sorry, I have a bunch of helicopters flying over me.
Well, I was going to just chime in to say thank you all. I know I say Dr. Alicia Hart, but it's Dr. Hutchings who's on this was on the Zoom. I'm just using her link to log in because I did not have the link on my email. But I wanted to just take a moment just to thank you all as the advisory, because your information, and one, I appreciate the candor that that was just happening, because that is how we are able to really prepare as well as to communicate more effectively with the community by having some of this insight and perspective and discourse, on whatever topic we're discussing at the time. So I just wanted to just thank you all, because I know you don't have to provide this time to us. And we do appreciate, the fact that you all are taking time out of your busy schedules to devote to this very important project. So I just wanted to just take a moment to thank you all for that.
Thanks, Dr. Hutchings. Anything else from any other advisory team members? Okay, great. Well, thank you all. I hope we were able to address a lot of the things from August that you said you wanted to see. I think we tried to focus, we've been focused a little bit on architecture and design and aesthetic. And so we did want to make sure we had this conversation tonight about site access and circulation and landscaping. If there is anything you would like to talk about more in depth at the next November, December meeting, let us know. Feel free to email us, or if you know now. And if not, we'll mostly be preparing for that hearing, just letting you know of any final conditions that came up, or anything else that we anticipate could be a challenge, and just making sure that we have the support of the advisory group going into the city council and planning commission hearings. Typically, we've done in the past, like the advisory team might submit a letter, or some of you might sign up to speak on behalf of the advisory team at the public hearing. So we'd love to be able to get your support in doing that. And we could talk a little bit more about that at our November or December meeting. We'll reach out with times if that works for you all. Okay, see some head nods. All right, well, thank you everybody. Have a good night. As always, feel free to reach out to us through the HS Project email. You can reach myself directly. You can reach Erin directly, any of us. You have our contact info, but thank you for joining tonight, and thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks.